we're going to talk about Baby Yoda.
Spoilers, bro.
Yeah, if you've been any bit online and you have somehow avoided Baby Yoda,
I'd like to
tell
know
me
how.
how. Yeah, tell me how, because pretty much after The Mandalorian dropped this past Tuesday and Baby Yoda was on that screen.
Looks so good too.
Oh my god! First of all, I mean we're gonna talk more about The Mandalorian, but I was just thinking how brilliant putting Yoda in this show was, in terms of like, it's November, kids are starting to make their Christmas lists. There's gonna be so many Baby Yoda items sold over the next month and a half. It's nuts how much money they probably made off this.
That's an interesting point too, because usually we get like vague Star Wars movie spoilers from toys because the toys leak out in advance, or Lego sets or something.
Yep.
I don't remember any Baby Yoda leaks happening, come to think of it. So good on them for keeping that under wraps, because you're right, they're definitely coming.
Oh, for sure they're coming. But we're talking about The Mandalorian, so why don't we break it down a little bit more. Jon Favreau's long-awaited Star Wars project, starring Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian, is here, and it's really interesting because the hype for this show was, I would say, incredibly high, and Star Wars properties are highly scrutinized, and this felt like, you had Favreau, got the Viper here, so it's like, okay, so this has all the pieces to be good. And then the first episode drops, and I thought reactions were a bit more tempered than I expected. I saw mostly positive, but people saying, yeah, there's a lot here, but I'm not sure if I really loved the first episode. And then the second episode drops on Friday, and I feel like that really cemented what this show could be. Why don't we give like our general thoughts, and we'll start digging in a little bit more to each episode and things that stood out.
Yeah, I think on the surface, so this is obviously launching the flagship launch title for Disney Plus, which premiered last Tuesday. And being that it's centered on an anonymous Mandalorian figure, with that comes a lot of baggage, notably Boba Fett, who, as everyone knows, was a very famous and cult-like figure ever since he debuted in Empire Strikes Back. And, despite a character that most people would say is actually very overrated in a movie sense because he doesn't do a whole lot in the movies and he has a really shitty death and things like that. But expanded universe really fleshed him out. Obviously, we learned about his childhood. Maybe not everyone's super fan of that.
Or did he die?
Well,
because apparently he's in the background of one of these shots.
I saw that. Man, that does not look like him. The colors are different. Like, people are saying, like, in the back of that, like, Mandalorian, like, holds fast that Pedro goes to, and it's like, no, it doesn't really look like him. Yeah, it's a little green. Like, what? We just watched 10 other Mandalorians. They all kind of look like Boba Fett. Like, that's stupid. But yeah, Boba Fett does survive in the EU. So would Boba Fett come back in this show? We can talk about that another time. But what this show needed to do, having the Mandalorian iconography in a mainstream sense, like, we've got Mandalorians in Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff, but not a lot of people watch that. It's really for kids. Getting it now, it's like, what does this show need to accomplish, or what justify itself, right? And I think right away from the pilot you get that, because we're getting that gritty underbelly of Star Wars that we always say we want. And anonymous characters, anonymous locations, and like cool things about Star Wars. Like in the first episode, we have a debate about currencies and stuff, and it's also a really effective way of telling you when the show is taking place. You find out that we're 5 years after Return of the Jedi. The Empire is gone. Imperial credits, not surprisingly, have inflated, and they don't have much value, right? Really, I think it was a really smart way to weave in Star Wars lore that's interesting to fans, but also like puts the show in perspective in a subtle way. So I think overall, right from the start, the show just establishes itself as being what you hope it would be. Again, like just something, an alternative take within the Star Wars universe in that sandbox that we've always wanted. And yes, this is still tangentially close to the original trilogy. There's still Imperial remnant forces, right? So it's not all new. There's lots of familiar things, which I think are welcome, right? You see gonk droids, you see Trandoshans, you see an IG droid, you see a Yoda species,
Yeah.
like. But I think it's such like a warm feeling of being back and seeing familiar things while also being aware right away that it's a different kind of storytelling in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So I was immediately on board with the first episode.
Yeah, they had a hard line to walk, right? You want this to be something new and fresh while also having enough to give you that comforting feeling like you're back in the universes that have made this such a beloved IP. And I think they, like you said, they did enough to kind of give you that sense and to bring that sense of comfort in, while also this is shot like maybe one other Star Wars movie, which would be Rogue One, and I guess maybe some shots in Solo. But it really has a Western feel, and
Oh, yeah.
it's really it's a welcome change, I think, to what we've become familiar with the Skywalker saga. To see something like this that, like you said, is so gritty, literally down in the mud in the second episode. I mean, he's covered in filth and mud, and they have such a deep bench for this cast. Dude, Taika Waititi voices a character that's in there for half an episode, not even. And then he's just gone. I mean, Horatio Sands played
so good.
Yeah, just the guy in
bounty.
the beginning. Yep, the guy with the bounty on him. And that's it. It's like, okay, the people just want to be a part of this.
They got Nick Nolte to dress up as an Ugnaught. Shout out Empire Strikes Back. Like, what?
He has spoken.
He has spoken.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, like how much potential the show has. And we didn't even talk about Carl Weathers, shows up for one scene. Werner
actually a
Herzog?
named character too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Herzog's so interesting, right? Because the whole time doing press, he's done a lot of it press, but like everyone asks him, he's like, yeah, I didn't feel any pressure because I didn't know who Jon Favreau was. I haven't seen any of his movies. He's like, I've never watched Star Wars. It's like, wait, how the fuck did they get you in this then?
Yeah.
First of all, it's a show. I don't even know if he's even done a lot of TV.
No.
Obviously the famous leader of German cinema for several decades now also acts. He's the client, right? Immediately intriguing because he's so talented, but also having him represent this mysterious imperial presence several years after the Empire has fallen and Palpatine has gone away. And, maybe he's still alive. Rise of Skywalker, we'll see. But that's interesting, right? And there's also really cool Easter eggs thrown out with this show that you don't need to pick up on. But if you do pick up on them, I think they just make it feel richer. You can look on my screen. The Mandalorian's weapon, that like electric blaster rifle he has, is a direct callback to Star Wars Holiday Special, the infamous cartoon that came out, / live actions, both. And the cartoon section was the debut of Boba Fett, and he had that very gun. Really cool. And then that scientist guy who's with Herzog, with the client, has Kaminoan insignias on it. Shout out the prequels. So are they trying to clone Baby Yoda? I don't know. But either way, I think the show is giving people what they expect. And I haven't heard like a lot of like strong criticism. Like I saw some people saying it's like, well, Mandalorians, they never take off their helmets, so it's hard for me to connect with a character who doesn't have, I don't see his face. And it's like, well, I don't know. Like, am I trying to connect with this dude? He's a killer, right? He's a bounty hunter. He kills people or captures people for money. Like, I'm here to see something different.
Right.
And I think that's what we're getting. And there's still plenty of familiar things along the way. So, yeah, I just find the whole Enterprise incredibly exciting. I'm so happy it's this good. We haven't even seen Gina Carano's character yet.
Right. And actually, that critique you brought up is funny because I actually had a note written down that I think it's amazing how much Pedro Pascal is able to give off emotionally while wearing a mask. Like there somehow, like the moment, and certainly there's flashbacks in the scene, but when he's getting the armament before he heads out, and they're flashing back to
the Beskar.
Yeah, his childhood and being like ripped away from this like war-torn area. But like even just like the way it like zooms in on him, you kind of like get a sense of what's going on. Or in the second episode when he's fighting that big I don't know what it is, a horned beast, and
Mm-hmm.
you can tell he's about to die, and it like zooms in on his face, he lays there in the mud, and you're like, oh, you know exactly what's going on. Like, it almost is like you don't
Yeah.
actually need to see his face do that. Do you think we will see his face eventually?
I'm gonna say no. Maybe not this season. We know they're already filming season 2 right now. Just kind of like stealthily, Favreau put it on Instagram. He's like, oh, by the way, season 2 is on its way. So he doesn't die, guys, in case you were actually thinking that was possible.
I mean, I care more about if Baby Yoda dies at this point. So
yeah, Baby Yoda. And shout out the nerds who like to clarify that it's not Yoda or Baby. Like, yeah, we know, but also
we don't know that.
Well, those nerds also know that the Yoda species famously was never named or allowed to be named in any kind of material. So it's just called Yoda species. There's no name of this. So therefore, calling it Baby Yoda is accurate. Anyway, yeah, introducing something of that magnitude, something that everybody who sees this show will immediately understand the gravity of, that is not something that I think Favreau or Lucasfilm would do lightly.
No.
And while I don't expect the show to directly influence Rise of Skywalker or the next movies or anything like that, I feel that same way about the MCU shows to come on Disney Plus, but it's going to amount to something. And just immediately being able to create all this theorizing because of the magnitude of this introduction. It's just not something I really considered at all. I did not expect anything like this to happen.
No.
You know?
I mean, who did with this show? It's not that we wouldn't expect something to be grabbing the zeitgeist for the show. I mean, it was a very highly anticipated show, like I said, but Yoda, I mean, one of probably the most beloved characters along with Chewie and certainly Yoda's Yoda's arc in the prequels is a bit that leaves something to be desired, like much of the prequels.
Hard to see, the future is.
But I gotta say, it's really it's funny to think about him scolding Anakin for wanting to fuck Padme, and then he's beating Yandel's cheeks on the side.
I think it's just another Yoda species.
Yoda's getting down with it, man. You don't think it's a clone?
That's the thing. It's like, I don't think he's a product of Yoda. 50 years old, which is really cool to be like, oh yeah, they do age really slowly. That makes a lot of sense. No wonder Yoda was 900. Now it's a cool little nod, right? But like the timeline of that, like 50 years back, that's like pre Clone Wars. So like, I don't think Yoda at his more lucid times, the Jedi was still really healthy. I just don't think that would have happened. So I think it's just another Yoda alien, although a clone is interesting. And maybe he was a clone that was taken, and that's why the client wants him back. Again, that cloner insignia on the scientist. Or maybe it's just a new baby and they want to actually clone it. I think the cloning obviously is going to come in somehow. Which side of it is, who can say? But yeah, man, it's fascinating. But through these 2 episodes, I got to say, like is this a new monocultural show? It's pretty close. Like, people are watching this shit week to week.
Well, and that
pretty
actually,
close to when it comes out, right?
That's the thing. It brings up a really good point about, and something we didn't touch on, how successful Disney Plus has been since its release, blowing away expectations of the Disney company. Over 10 million subscribers on the first day. Just like, it's absurd how much people are drawn to the Disney catalog, but I think The Mandalorian plays a big part in that.
Primarily just the U.S. too. Yeah.
So, monocultural show, I think it's as close as we're going to get now. And that's fun. There's a lot of people doing recaps, reviews, deep dives. It's worth it. So if you haven't gotten Disney Plus and you're like on the fence and you like Star Wars, you have to get this. I wanted to ask you, what is like your favorite battle scene so far, like action scene? There's a lot of sequences so far of fighting and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, episode 2 in general, I thought was really fun, really refreshing. That had a real like pulpy, like comic book story feel. Boba Fett obviously was very famous for being the subject of countless EU comics throughout the decades, and lots of them were like really weird and strange, and Boba Fett doing weird ass shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that just brought me back to that. And of course, it was cool to see Jawas and the Sandcrawler again along the way. I really like that fight he has with the Trandoshans, and I believe the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
I like those prosthetics. That's cool. Definitely a nice update over Bosk from Empire Strikes Back. I like that fight a lot. Yeah, it's just cool seeing him actually fight because he has the full grasp of what the Mandalorian armor entails, like all those gadgets and weapons and things he has. So I think that's my go-to right now. But the actions looked good the whole time. I guess the Jawa Sandcrawler chase scene was really cool as well. So yeah.
Jawas suck though, man.
Yeah. I thought they were really funny. Like the whole thing with the egg too. And they just wanted to fucking eat the egg. It's like dessert. It's like, hey, bring us like a cake and we'll give you your shit back. Really funny. Yeah. It reminds me of a comic book.
It was just really good. There's nothing I can really say bad about it. I would say probably the action scene I liked the most was just with IG-11. I mean, that whole like shootout was just
incredible,
unbelievable. Yeah, and seeing IG-11 be such a boss, man, acceptable. That is acceptable. So good. Taika Waititi, shout out him. Any last thoughts before we move on?
I think undernoted so far, Ludwig Göransson is doing the score for the show. Again, so much talent involved. So, yeah, I think it looks great too, which it doesn't feel cheap.
No.
And, for years, George Lucas always famously said, I have 100 scripts for a TV show, but I can't make it right now. It's just not financially possible. And for years, as when I was younger, I just assumed live action Star Wars show, can't do it. And it's kind of crazy that we're here, and also it's good. So you truly do love to see it.
Truly do love to see it. Dave has spoken.